Every full moon, someone disappeared. Not robbed, not found dead. Just gone. No blood in the streets, no tracks in the dirt. No screams that lasted longer than a second. Only whispers. They said something lived in the mines beneath Black Hollow. Something that breathed when the moon turned white. And the night a stranger rode into town, claiming he hunted monsters, Black Hollow finally felt hope. They should have felt afraid. Black Hollow sat between jagged cliffs and abandoned mine shafts, its wooden buildings coated in coal dust that never truly washed away. The mountains around it looked like broken teeth against the sky. People didn't smile much there. Miners worked by day. By night, they locked their doors and counted their family members twice. 3 months ago, the disappearances started. First, a miner named Caleb Ross. Last seen walking home after a late shift, his boots were found near the well. Then Mary Whitaker, gone from her bed. Windows still locked from the inside. Then 2 brothers, who had sworn they would stay awake together under the full moon, both vanished before sunrise. No signs of struggle, no blood, just absence. Sheriff Dalton stood in the middle of town every full moon with a rifle in his hands, and fear in his eyes, and every month he failed. The stranger rode in 3 days before the next full moon. Long dark coat, wide brim hat, rifle strapped across his back, a silver pendant hanging at his throat. He dismounted without asking permission and walked straight into the saloon. "I hear you've got a problem," he said calmly. The saloon went silent. Sheriff Dalton stepped forward. "Depends who's asking." The stranger met his gaze evenly. "Name's Silas Kane. I hunt things most men pretend don't exist." Murmurs spread through the room. "You saying this ain't human?" the sheriff asked. Silas tilted his head slightly. "Tell me something. The disappearances, they only happened during the full moon." Dalton hesitated. "Yes. And? No bodies, no." Silas nodded once, like a man confirming what he already knew. "I'll stay," he said. "I'll end it. Hope is dangerous. But it spreads fast." By nightfall, half the town believed salvation had ridden in on a black horse. The other half wondered why a man who hunted monsters smiled so little. Silas insisted on seeing the mines before nightfall. Sheriff Dalton and 2 miners guided him through the narrow paths leading into the mountain. The entrance yawned like an open mouth. Cold air spilled from within. Inside, the darkness swallowed lantern light quickly. Timber supports creaked softly overhead. Old tracks disappeared into shadow. "Last man vanished near shaft 12. 1, Marner whispered. Silas crouched near the dirt floor, examining, touching, smelling. "Any animal sightings?" he asked. "No wolves this deep," Dalton replied. "And no tracks." Silas stood slowly. "You're not looking for tracks," he said quietly. "Then what are we looking for?" Silas's eyes flickered toward the deeper tunnels. Patterns. He moved deeper without waiting. The lantern light flickered violently for a moment. 1 miner swore under his breath. They found nothing. No blood, no bones, no claw marks. But when they exited the mine, Silas's expression had changed slightly, like a man recognizing a familiar scent. The moon rose fat and pale over Black Hollow. Doors locked early, windows barred, candles blown out. Silas stood alone in the center of town, rifle resting against his shoulder. Sheriff Dalton watched from the jailhouse porch. "You sure you don't want backup?" Dalton called. "Silas, didn't turn. If it's what I think it is, you won't help." The moon climbed higher. The town held its breath. Then a scream. Sharp, sudden, cut short. It came from the edge of town, near the old mine entrance. Silas moved instantly. Fast. Too fast. Dalton followed at a distance, heart pounding. The scream hadn't sounded like an animal attack. It sounded human. When Dalton reached the mine entrance, he saw Silas standing over a fallen body. A young woman from the boarding house. Unmoving, Dalton raised his rifle. Step back. Silas turned slowly. His face was shadowed beneath the moonlight. No, he said calmly. Dalton's eyes dropped to the dirt. There were no tracks, no signs of struggle, only Silas and the body. Where is it? Dalton demanded. Silas's gaze lifted toward the moon. It's close. Where? Silas's lips curled slightly. You're looking at it. Dalton's breath caught. What did you say? Silas stepped forward slowly. Monsters don't always hide in the dark, Sheriff. Sometimes they ride into town. Dalton fired. The shot echoed across the cliffs. Silas staggered, but didn't fall. The wound should have dropped him. Instead, he smiled faintly. Then in that smile, Dalton saw something break beneath the surface. Not fangs, not claws. Something worse. Recognition. Silas removed the silver pendant from his neck and let it fall into the dirt. You wanted a hunter? He said softly. You needed a reason. Dalton's hands trembled. You've been choosing victims, Silas continued calmly. Minors in debt. Women who knew too much. Men who threatened your badge. Dalton felt the world tilt. You think fear doesn't make men monsters? Silas asked quietly. The moonlight shifted, and suddenly Dalton wasn't sure if the blood on Silas' coat was fresh or old. Behind them, doors creaked open. Townspeople emerging cautiously. They saw Dalton holding the rifle. They saw Silas standing wounded. And they saw the body on the ground. Silas looked at the crowd, then back at Dalton. You can blame me, he whispered. Dalton's breathing grew shallow. Because the truth was worse than any monster in the mines. There had never been claw marks. Never been tracks. Only careful choices. And convenient disappearances. Silas staggered backward slightly. The town watched, and in the moonlight, no one knew who the real monster was. Sheriff Dalton's rifle trembled in his hands. Silas Kane stood wounded but upright, blood darkening his coat, eyes calm to calm. You're lying, Dalton growled. Silas tilted his head slightly. Am I the townspeople looked? Between them, old Mrs. Harper clutched her shawl. Two miners stepped closer. The boarding house owner stared at the girl's body, whispering prayers. Dalton's voice cracked. You came here knowing about the full moon? You staged this? Silas's faint smile returned. You think I could make people disappear without anyone noticing patterns? There were no patterns, Dalton snapped. Silas's eyes sharpened. Exactly. The word hit like a hammer. The crowd shifted uneasily. Dalton felt sweat run down his spine, despite the cold air. You said it yourself, Silas continued softly. No tracks, no blood, no torn doors, no signs of struggle. He took one slow step forward. That's not how monsters feed. Dalton fired again. The second bullet tore into Silas's shoulder. This time, he fell to one knee. Gasps rippled through the town. Dalton advanced, rifle aimed. You don't get to turn them against me. Silas coughed, blood touching his lips. I didn't turn them, he whispered. You did that long ago. Part 6. The pattern. A miner stepped forward. Sheriff, Caleb Ross owed money. Dalton didn't respond. Another voice spoke. Up. Mary Whitaker was going to leave town. Someone else added quietly. The two brothers accused you of skimming mining shares. The whispers grew louder. Dalton's jaw tightened. "You're letting him poison your minds?" He barked. Silas forced himself to stand again, swaying slightly. "I hunt monsters," he said hoarsely. "But I don't always kill them." He looked at the townspeople. "Sometimes I reveal them." Dalton's breathing grew uneven. "You don't understand what it takes to hold a town together," he said. "To hold it together," Silas repeated. "Or to control it." The moon climbed higher. The body at their feet seemed smaller now, less like proof, more like consequence. Dalton's eyes darted toward the mine entrance. For the first time, fear touched his face. "You needed the legend," Silas continued. "A beast in the mine, a curse in the moonlight. Something the town could fear more than you." Dalton's hands tightened around the rifle. "I protected this town." "From what?" Silas asked quietly. Silence answered. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. It came out like a man finally too tired to keep lying. "I chose them," Dalton muttered. The words barely carried, but everyone heard. Gasps. A woman began to cry. "They were going to ruin everything," Dalton continued. "The debt, the shortages, the panic. If word got out, Black Hollow would have died." "So you let people die instead?" Silas said softly. Dalton's eyes burned. "You think miners stay loyal without fear? You think people obey without something in the dark?" He gestured wildly toward the cliffs. "They needed a monster. And so you became one," Silas finished. Dalton's voice cracked. "I did what was necessary." The wind picked up suddenly, howling through the narrow streets like the mine itself was exhaling. The townspeople began stepping back from Dalton. Not violently, not angrily, just away. He saw it happening. The loss of control, the collapse of fear. "No," he muttered. "You don't get to look at me like that." He raised his rifle. Again, but this time not at Silas. At the crowd. "Go back inside," he shouted. "All of you." No one moved. Silas stepped between Dalton and the townspeople, wounded, bleeding, but steady. "It's over," Silas said quietly. Dalton's hands shook violently now. "You're no hunter," he spat. Silas looked at him for a long moment, then answered calmly, "No." The word stunned the crowd. "I'm not." Dalton blinked. "What?" Silas's breathing grew heavy. "I don't hunt monsters," he said. "I follow rumors." He coughed again, blood darker now. "I go where people blame the dark, because most of the time, the dark is innocent." The town stood silent. "You knew from the beginning," Dalton whispered. "I suspected," Silas replied. "Men who truly believe in beasts don't need to convince others so loudly." Dalton lowered the rifle slightly, and the pendant. Someone asked from the crowd. Silas glanced down at it, lying in the dirt. A prop. The word echoed. He swayed again. "You let him shoot you," Dalton said slowly. Silas gave the faintest smile. "Fear reveals truth faster than questions." Dalton's shoulders sagged. The legend was gone. The monster exposed. But something else lingered in the air. Something unsettled. Because Silas had not denied everything. He turned toward the mine entrance briefly. And for a flicker of a second, his expression changed. Not fear, not guilt. Recognition. Dalton was arrested before dawn. The townspeople locked him in his own jail cell. No one celebrated. No one cheered. Black Hollow had survived. But survival felt heavy. Silas lay in the boarding house, wounds stitched roughly by trembling hands. By morning, he was gone. No horse, no farewell. No trace, only the silver pendant left behind on the bedside table. 3 months passed, No more disappearances. The full moon rose and fell quietly. Black Hollow began to breathe again. Until one night, under a perfect white moon, a miner failed to return home. No blood, no tracks, no broken doors. Just gone. The town did not speak of it openly. They did not blame Dalton. They did not mention Silas Kane. But sometimes, on the nights when the wind blows through the abandoned mine shafts, it doesn't sound like air moving through stone. It sounds like a whisper. And no one in Black Hollow is certain anymore whether the stranger was a hunter or simply a monster who prefers other monsters first.